I'll admit I was wrong and got caught slipping. Last night I thought the game was going to be trash. I was tripping. The Jets got beat by a quarterback named Brett Rippon? What? Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 96th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Happy Friday to every one of you out there. Thank you for joining me on the pod today. It's Friday, as I've mentioned already, so you already know. You already know what that means. Money picks of the week. All right, we'll do that later on in the show. Not the best week last week. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I hit double digits, and that's always the goal. Okay, so don't want to set the bar too low, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Also, we'll talk a little bit later on in the show. Thursday night leftovers, okay? That was a fun game last night, wasn't it? 37-26 victory for the Denver Broncos over the, or 37-28 victory, I think it was. What was the score in that game? Something like that. 36, 37. Broncos won the game by 9. I know that much. I think they had 37. So if they won by 9, it was 28-37, if I'm not mistaken. It was a fun game. We'll talk about that. There were a lot of things, a lot of little tidbits left over from that game. So we'll get to the leftovers from that last night's Broncos victory over the Jets a little bit later in the show. And then you know what we got to do. But we're not going to do the Gem Droppin Session yet, because I want to talk to you quickly about the COVID-19 situation. We talked about this on the last podcast. And remember, a lot of information was still coming out. And there's still information coming out. As a matter of fact, 2 more Titans players tested positive for COVID-19 this morning. So that total has now elevated to 7 players on the Titans roster that is tested positive for COVID-19, to go along with the 6 members of the staff that is tested positive, bringing the total to 13 members of the Titans organization that have tested positive for COVID-19. So that game has been postponed. And what it looks like right now, and they were waiting to find out what the test results would be for the Vikings players, 0 players and staff members for the Minnesota Vikings tested positive for COVID-19, which is a great sign. So what that says is that I think this is a Titans problem, and that the guys that had it, I think either contracted it after the game was over or didn't come in contact with anybody on the Minnesota Vikings roster. That being said, which is a good thing, the NFL had to wait to make a decision on when to reschedule the games. They didn't know if they could reschedule the games quite yet down the road until Minnesota had their tests cleared, and they did. Everyone passed, 0 positive tests. So that game in week 4 between the Vikings and the Texans is going to go off as normally scheduled. Okay, so they're going to play that game. The only game that's going to be postponed in week 4 is the Titans and Steelers game that was supposed to be played this week. And it's looking like the NFL has not announced this yet, but it's been reported that they're playing around with the idea, and this makes the most sense because the Ravens and the Steelers both had a week 8 bye week, and the Titans had a week 7 bye. So what it's looking like now is that each of the 2 teams, the Steelers and the Titans, are now going to have week 4 byes. Obviously, they're not playing this week. And they will then play in week 7. And what will happen is the Ravens, who had the week 8 bye, will then have the week 7 bye now. So instead of them having the bye week in week 8, they'll just move it up a week earlier, and the Ravens will be off on week 7 instead of week 8. So for all intents and purposes, it looks like the Titans and Steelers game will be postponed and moved to week number 7. That's what it looks like right now, but the NFL has not confirmed that at this moment. But I'm shocked that they're even doing this. I thought they would just, give the Titans a loss and keep it pushing. The Steelers didn't do anything wrong in this situation, but the NFL wants to play the game, and we'll see what happens. I have mixed feelings about this, emotions, because I feel like and the Steelers aren't being penalized here, other than the fact that you take a perfectly good week 8 bye and now you make it a week 4 bye and they've got to go the rest of the season without a bye week, and that sucks. But the players are fine with it. It's interesting though, because the Steelers, they practiced all this week up until Wednesday. I think Wednesday was their last day of practice before they realized that this could be a bye week. If I'm a player, I want my whole entire week. So this is kind of weird, but again, we talked about fair and unfair before the season started. It's not going to be a fair season. Things aren't going to be normal. So that's all a part of that umbrella that I talked about before the season started, about all of these things that are going to fall under the umbrella of unfair. And you have to be willing to take that. And that goes for the players as well. So it is what it is at the end of the day. It looks like the Titans are the only team that has been impacted by this COVID-19 outbreak. Thank goodness. So with that being said, let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get to thinking a little bit. So I wanted to ask you a question. We're now heading towards the quarter pole of the season. So most coaches like to break the season up into quarters. There's 16 games, 4 weeks, into 4-week increments, if you will. So the first 4 games of the season, you want to go 3-1. If you can go 3-1 in every quadrant, every quarter of the season, you're 12-4. 12-4 usually is going to be good enough to not only win you a division, but in the past, when there were 2 byes, that's usually good enough to get you a bye week, or at least be in the conversation for a bye in the playoffs. That's no longer the case. Now that there's only 1 bye in each conference, you got to bust your ass to try and get that. And usually 13 probably is going to be the magic number that's going to get you there. Maybe when the schedule is expanded to, what is it going to go to? 17 games, right? Maybe the magic number then becomes 14. I don't know. We'll see. But at the end of the day, the best way to go about it is, hey, go 3-1 in every quarter, and you're going to make the postseason. I haven't met a 12-4 team in my life that hasn't made the postseason. So you go 3-1 in each quarter, you should be just fine. So teams like to break it up into quarters. So do I. I think it's a great way to do it. You go quarter, and then that's a half, quarter into the season. So I want to ask you this question. As we head to week 4 and you're starting to learn more about these teams, I don't want to ask you about teams in particular. We'll do that next week, okay? I want to ask you about divisions as a whole. Okay, now that we're heading towards that quarter pole and we're going into week 4, what division has surprised you the most to this point? Now, it could be good or bad. It could have been a division that you thought was going to be really good. They've underachieved. It could be a division that you thought was going to be really good or really bad, and they're actually performing a lot better than you had anticipated heading into the season. Now, things are subject to change, obviously. As we sit here on October 2nd, you could have a division playing great football right now, and we could come back, have this same conversation on November 2nd, and that same division isn't looking as hot as it did, a month earlier. So, it's all in what you perceive the divisions to be going into the season, which we had no idea what these divisions were going to be. We didn't know what these teams were going to do. The only thing that I was willing to bet on and I was willing to go out on a limb on was that the NFC West was going to be the best division in football. I felt really confident about that. I really couldn't tell you much about anybody else's squad or anybody else's division, but I knew that division. And there were a couple of real things that I was all but certain about. If the Ravens and the Chiefs were healthy, they were going to be the 2 best teams in the AFC. Couldn't really tell you much more other than that in the AFC. And on the NFC side of the bracket, that the NFC West was going to be among the best divisions, not just in the NFC, but in all of football. Those were the 2 things that I felt really confident in saying before the season started. And those things have rung true thus far. Chiefs have been relatively healthy, so have the Ravens. Both of those teams are respectively the best in their conferences. And in the NFC, the NFC West is the clear-cut favorite in terms of the division in that conference and really in football. Don't think any division right now even can smell the NFC West in terms of what they've done to start this season off, with everyone being over 500, and the worst team in the division is 2-1, and there are 3 teams tied for 2-1 and 1 team at 3-0. So that division is absolutely killing it, which I anticipated, and I think most of you did as well before the season started. But the surprise for me, and you can look at a bunch of divisions, you could look at the AFC West and say, man, thought that was going to be a better division, but injuries have really taken effect there, whether you're talking Denver or you're talking with the Chargers. And so you could say, wow, I didn't expect the Raiders to be 2-1 and be second place right now in that division. Sure, absolutely. I could see that. You could say, hey, didn't think the AFC East would be any good after Brady vacated, but you look up, you got a 3-0 Bills team. Who saw that coming? You got a 2-1 Patriots team playing extremely good football. The Dolphins aren't half bad. They're 1-2, but they've been in ball games and they look to be a much improved team. And then the Jets are a dumpster fire, but we knew that going into the season. So you can say, hey, the AFC East is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Same for the AFC North. Didn't really know what to expect from Pittsburgh, even though they were getting Roethlisberger back. The Browns look to be a much better team. They're 2-1, over 500. And the Bengals, yeah, they haven't won a game, but they've been ultra competitive. They could easily be 2-1 right now if not for some, things like your kicker missing a kick to send the game to overtime, or offensive pass interference penalty that was on AJ Green in week 1, or, simply just not making enough plays against Philadelphia on the road. Or same thing could be said in week 2 versus the Browns. They could easily be 2-1 right now, could the Cincinnati Bengals. So you could say, hey, that's a division. But for me, when I look at all the divisions, it's not a division in the AFC that has surprised me to this point. I'm looking at an NFC division, and you might say, oh, you're a Washington football team fan, so you're going to say the NFC East. You didn't think it was going to be this bad. Nah, not exactly. Okay. I knew the NFC East had a chance. Of late, they've had a penchant for being a really bad division, and I hate it. I've talked about this already. I hate the fact that our division is the laughingstock of the NFC. And it's one of those divisions that you look at and you say, can we not let them in the party this year? Could we just skip them and give another bid to somebody else that deserves it? Like, don't even let the winner of that division in. Like, I hate the fact that that's even a conversation. It was a conversation last year. It's trending in that direction now. It's early, but Philadelphia isn't snapping out of whatever funk they're in. They just stink this year. They're not good this year for whatever reason. And it starts with Carson Wentz, but they're just not the same Eagles team that we've come to know and love. And they're not going to snap out with their schedule set up the way that it is. They're just not going to snap out of this funk. Dallas is interesting because they could be 2-1. They could be 3-0 right now, could the Cowboys. But instead, they're 1-2. They could be 0-3. I mean, their defense isn't any good. But their offense is dynamic. So it's just hard to say. But it's not the NFC East. They're a close second, though. To me, the division that is the most surprising is the NFC South. And here's why. Because I looked at the NFC South and I said, I thought that the Saints would be better. And I couldn't have accounted for Michael Thomas getting hurt. It is what it is. I couldn't have foreseen what has transpired with the Falcons blowing leads in each of the last 2 weeks. I thought this division was going to rival the NFC West in terms of how competitive it was going to be top to bottom. Now, Carolina was the one outlier. I thought they were going to struggle this year and be one of the worst teams in football. They have a win. The Falcons don't. So I was just way off base with this division to start. Now, things could turn around. The Falcons could be better. The Saints can get their act together. And the Bucs are going to be what I think they're going to be, which is a quality football team. I'm not going to move off of my prediction that I made earlier in the season where I had the Bucs missing the postseason at 9-7. But right now they look like they're going to be one of the better teams in the entire conference. So I'm probably going to be wrong about that prediction, but I'm not going to move off of that after just 3 weeks. I'll say this much though. When I look at the NFC South and I look at the division top to bottom, you got the Bucs at 2-1 leading the division. That's not a surprise. I mean, the Saints could easily be 2-1 right now, but they're not. It's not shocking that the Bucs lead the division at 2-1. I thought the Saints would be better, but having Green Bay in the first 3 weeks, I thought they would have at least one loss. I didn't expect them to go to Las Vegas and lose, however. So that's where I'm a little shocked with the Rams. But again, I didn't know Michael Thomas was going to be out. With Michael Thomas, they could easily be 3-0 right now. Those games could be totally different, but they're not. They're 1-2. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. All right. The real surprise for me, though, is Atlanta, because I had them as a playoff team this year. I had them winning 10 games. I had them making the postseason, and their offense is good enough, as we've seen. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, with Dan Quinn, this defense just hasn't figured it out. And, it's just amazing to me, because when I looked at this Falcons football team, when Dan Quinn first got there, the one thing that you could hang your hat on with Atlanta was their defense. They played top-notch defense. The year they went to the Super Bowl, everyone wants to talk about their offense. Their defense was really good. The following year, after the Super Bowl run, the only thing that they could hang their hat on was their defense. They weren't very good offensively that next year. And then remember, that was when Kyle Shanahan finally left after that Super Bowl run, and they had a new offense. And I want to say it was Dirk Cutter that came in and was their offensive coordinator, and they struggled that. No, it wasn't. It wasn't Cutter. It was your boy from Alabama, the college coach. I can't remember his name, but it was a little bit of a struggle, needless to say. And so they weren't sharp offensively, but they played good enough defense to give them a chance. And I remember that next year they went to LA and beat the Rams in a first round playoff game in a wild card weekend. And I said, man, this Falcons defense is legit. And they had a shot the following week against the Eagles in the postseason, and they just fell short. But the defense gave them a chance. So I always thought the defense would be something they could lean on. And ever since 2018, or 2017, I should say, this defense hasn't been right for the Falcons. They just don't seem to be on the same page. They don't seem to have the same continuity that they had early in Dan Quinn's tenure as Falcons head coach. And they can't stop anybody right now defensively. And that's killing them, absolutely killing them in crucial situations. And oh, by the way, they don't know how to hold on to a lead either. And that's pretty much why they're 0-3 instead of 2-1 at this point. But that's a surprise to me. And then the fact that Carolina has a win before Atlanta was a big surprise. I didn't think they were, especially with the injury to Christian McCaffrey. I thought there's no way these guys are going to win a game until McCaffrey gets back. And here they are going on the road with Mike Davis starring in a role last week to get them a win on the road versus the Los Angeles Chargers. That's impressive. And I told you, Matt Rule's going to turn that program around. And so you better get your wins in on Carolina now while you can, because Matt Rule's going to change things in Carolina before you know it. And so I'm shocked by the NFC South. That's the division right now that I look in and I say, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see, the Saints at 1-2, the Falcons at 0-3, and the Panthers at 1-2. If anything, I thought, maybe the Falcons, stumble out of the gates a little bit. They had a tough schedule. It's not like they had a cupcake schedule. At Dallas isn't easy. Home for Seattle isn't easy. So, I thought they could beat the Bears at home, and I thought they would beat the Bears at home. So I could have seen them starting off the season 1-2. But to be 0-3 and to have the Panthers actually have a win before them, didn't expect that. Didn't expect this division to only have one team over 500 at this point of the season. I thought 3 out of the 4 teams would be over 500 at this point of the season, to be honest with you. And so really shocked at the NFC South and their inability to be consistent right now. Injuries have had a little bit to say, and a little bit to do with how that division has turned out to this point, especially in New Orleans, but no excuses. They just haven't gotten it done in that division. So that's the division that has caught me off guard to this point. I'd love to see what you guys have to say about that. Make sure you leave that down in the comment section of this video. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to the microwave, because you know what time it is. I tell you all the time, I'm a leftovers guy, all right, but I'm not in the fridge leftovers unless it's like Thanksgiving food, and I'm going to be eating it for quite some time. If this is, just a little bit of leftovers from the night before, I don't need to put it in the fridge. I don't need to have to reheat. I'm cool with room temperature food. I know that may not be your thing. I'm not a big heat guy. So I'm going to the microwave. Let's get some of those Thursday night leftovers, man. And usually when things have a chance to simmer a bit and all of those ingredients and all of that seasoning gets to actually marinate, sometimes the leftovers are better. So let's take a look at this game from last night as the Denver Broncos are victorious over the New York Jets. And what was a crazy game last night, back and forth. You thought the Broncos had firm control and grasp of the game at one point. They were up big, and it seemed like they were going to dominate in that ball game. And then they throw away the lead, and it seemed like it happened so rapidly. They were up 27-16 in this ball game. And in a blink of an eye, they were down, it seemed like. A couple of interceptions thrown by the second-year quarterback making his first career NFL start, Brett Rippon. And just like that, the Jets had taken the lead, at 28-27. And it was just amazing how everything kind of transpired the way that it did. But, to the credit of the Broncos, they finish off the game on a 10-0 run, win this game 37-28. And it was an impressive performance, even though he had some mistakes, 3 interceptions in the game total for Brett Rippon. I thought he did some really good things. And we're going to start first with Adam Gase, because there was a lot of conversation about Adam Gase prior to the game and whether he would be fired if this was a loss. And then there was conversation, obviously, after the game, after they didn't get it done. And there was a controversial decision made by Gase in the game. We talked about it last night on the overtime series about not going for it on 4th and inches last night. That was a big decision in the game. You're trailing by 2, less than 5 minutes to go in the game. You pick up this first down. For all intents and purposes, Broncos only have 2 timeouts. You're already in field goal range because he elected to kick the field goal and they made it and they took the lead. But you're already in field goal range, so that's you're not hurting anything. You go for this, and if you don't get it, there's a decision there that can be second guessed. But I think most people would have gone for it in that situation. And then if you don't get it, I don't think anybody's faulting you for going for it on 4th and inches in that situation, because to me, you weigh the risk versus the reward, the pros and the cons. And to me, the pros of going for it just far outweighed the cons of not going for it. I thought that the risk was minimal because it's 6 inches that you need, and the reward was maximum because if you pick it up, now obviously if you don't pick it up, you don't take the lead and you could lose the game. You ended up losing the game anyway. But and hindsight is 2020. I understand that, but at the end of the day, you pick up that first down. There are so many options that are afforded to you at that point. You can run the clock out and kick a walk-off field goal if you continue to move the football, pick up first downs. You could pick up another first down, and let's say that's all you get, and now you got to settle for a field goal. Okay, you're even closer now for your kicker because it still was a far kick. It's not like this is a chip shot field goal. It was like 46 yards. It wasn't a gimme. All right, and Ficken had already missed earlier in the night, but it was negated by a penalty by the Broncos. So it's not like he hadn't shown the ability to miss, although he was like 4-4 last night. Sam Ficken was really good for the Jets last night. However, you're closer for your kicker. You would have forced the Broncos to start thinking about using their 2 remaining timeouts. Remember, you got Brett Rippon out there who on his last 2 possessions has turned the football over. So his confidence is a little shaken and rattled at this point. So if you put him in a position with no timeouts, having to drive down the field and put his team in the field goal range, you got to feel good about what you're going to potentially be able to do. If you are able to burn another 2 minutes off the clock and now the Broncos don't have any timeouts, or maybe they only have 1 timeout remaining. You got to feel good about that spot. And so I just thought it was a bad, or you could have scored a touchdown. Who's to say 2 plays later, Darnold doesn't find Jamison Crowder wide open over the middle of the field and it's a touchdown. Like, you don't know what would have happened, but you didn't give yourself a chance. You just settled for the field goal. I digress. The report coming out of the game is that Adam Gase is going to be fined for the remainder of 2020. That no move will be made during the season, and they will evaluate his status as Jets head coach after the season has been completed. That's the word out of New York right now. Now, do you believe that to be 100% true? I'm going to take it at face value and say that they're not going to get rid of him. I've never been a massive advocate for in-season firings, because what are you really accomplishing by getting rid of a coach in season, other than, and this is the only time that I support moving on from a coach in season, is if you are going to look for his replacement in season. Okay, if you are looking to the collegiate ranks, or maybe a coach that has a great track record that's been out of the league for a year, let's say they got fired 2 years ago, or you're trying to lure one of these legendary coaches out of retirement, like Bill Cowher, for instance, and I'm just throwing out a random name. And so you need to be laying the groundwork now. Okay, so you can't wait till the end of the season to do this. You want to be able to start negotiating and figuring out the next move, similar to what the Panthers did with Ron Rivera last year. David Tepper knew he wanted to move on from Rivera, and he knew who he wanted. He wanted Matt Rule. He wanted a college coach. So he knew he had to lay that groundwork early. He couldn't wait until after the season was done. It'd be too late. You'd be kind of cutting into your offseason and stopping that coach from getting a head start. So same thing with Washington last year. They knew they wanted to go after Ron Rivera or somebody that wasn't, already employed. And if that's the case, then you want to get a head start on everybody else that potentially may be making a coaching move, like Dallas did, like the Giants did. You want to get a head start on those coaches that are going to be canned and looking for a new guy. You want to beat them to the punch. That's the only time where I'm really on board with moving on from a coach in season. Really, it doesn't boost your players' morale. It doesn't give them any kind of extra incentive or motivation. It's one thing that they know this guy's not going to be around. And so maybe they're not doing some of the things that they need to do because they know this isn't the guy they're going to have to answer to next year. But it's not going to add any value to your franchise in the moment, firing a guy. So you might as well just let him finish out. You're paying him anyway. But I don't think he's getting fired during the season, even though I'm telling you, it's going to get ugly. And I think the Jets are going to reevaluate this decision at some point, because they're going to be 0-8. If you've seen their schedule, unless the Chargers have one of those anemic offensive days where they can only put up 10 and the Jets get to 13 and somehow win, they're not winning in their next 5 weeks. Their next 5 games go something like this. And again, I don't know the exact order of them, but I know it's these 5 teams. It's Arizona, it's the Chargers, it's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, and it's the Patriots. They're not winning any of those games. They're going to be 0-9 after 9 weeks of football, okay? So they've got a legitimate shot. And again, they're going to beat the Dolphins at least once. I think that's the team that they're going to get. They're not going 0-16. So we're not going to have the 0-16 talk about the Jets and Adam Gase. They're not going 0-16. They're going to at least beat the Dolphins. All right, they're going to get somebody in that division. They've got the Bills still at home. They got the Patriots. I think they got the Patriots twice. They haven't seen the Patriots at all this year. They're going to beat somebody. They're not going 0-16. But Adam Gase right now seems to be safe for the remainder of the 2020 season. I don't know if I necessarily believe that to be the case, but that's the word out on the street right now. We'll see how that goes. I did not like how he handled Mekhi Becton last night. I don't like how the decision he made in the game last night to kick the field goal. I don't think Adam Gase is the right man for the job, but you already know that. I've told you this at least a million times already. How about Brett Rippon last night? A lot of the focus was on Sam Darnold, and rightfully so. Third-year quarterback. You really want to see him take that next step. It's so hard on him. We'll talk about Darnold here in a second. But here's Brett Rippon on a Thursday night short week, getting his first career NFL start after getting his first NFL exposure a week ago against Tampa in some mop-up duty. And I thought he actually showed well. And, the crazy part is you got all these Washington fans coming at me during the course of this game when Rippon was tearing it up after he had thrown the touchdown pass to Tim Patrick in the back of the end zone for his second score of the night. And he was cruising at that point. And, you had Joe Buck salivating over this game. Oh, what a game by, Brett Rippon. What a night. Go have yourself a game, young fella. And all this stuff that he was talking. And then he imploded in the fourth quarter. All right, 2 interceptions, almost single-handedly threw the game away. One of those picks was just downright awful. I mean, just egregious. It's triple coverage. His guy isn't even close to the football. I don't know what he was looking at. I think he just panicked. There was pressure. And he threw it right to Pierre Desir, the French assassin. And he takes it the other way for the touchdown. And I'm thinking, what are you doing, man? Seriously, are you trying to blow this thing? You know, this was this storybook, first start for you. You were going to get a game ball. This is going to be a story you can tell your kids 20 years from now. And you're blowing this, dude. You're blowing this. What are you doing? And luckily enough for him, the defense made enough plays. And the Jets did enough self-imploding that he was able to get enough opportunities to redeem himself. And he made some good plays down the stretch. The throw on 3rd and 10 to Tim Patrick down the sideline, that's a great throw. That's a great throw. I thought the throw on the play before that to Deshaun Hamilton was a good ball. I maybe it was a little bit further than he would have liked, but I thought Hamilton could have tracked the football better. He looked lost on that one. I don't think he actually saw the ball well there, but at the end of the day, Rippon did some really good things, and then he had the big block at the end of the game on the final offensive snap for Denver. A meaningful offensive snap, the one that Melvin Gordon III scored a touchdown on. He had the key kickout block there. So I thought he did some really good things, man. Showed some good accuracy and timing and rhythm of the play. I thought his best attribute last night wasn't his accuracy. It was his ability to manipulate the pocket. I thought he did some good sliding in the pocket and buying a little extra time. There were a couple of throws where I said, man, that's a hell of a throw. That's a hell of a job of manipulating the pocket and just buying that extra second to allow yourself to get the football off and allow this receiver to clear that zone, or allow this receiver to uncover so that you can put the ball in only a spot where only he can get to it. He did some really good things. And I said this last night, I'll say it once more, and then we'll move on. I don't see Brett Rippon as a starting quarterback in this league, but what I do see him having a role as is like that Nick Mullins role in San Francisco. Remember a couple of years ago, Nick Mullins got an opportunity because Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL. They went to CJ Beathard. He wasn't good enough. They gave Nick Mullins an opportunity, and Nick Mullins took advantage of that opportunity, and now he's the entrenched backup in San Francisco, and he's starting now because Garoppolo went down with an ankle injury, and he's playing well. It was invaluable experience that he got that season, and you're seeing the same thing here. Drew Lock goes down for a little bit of a spell. They go to Jeff Driscoll. He's not getting it done well enough, so they say, well, not give Brett an opportunity. He's getting some invaluable experience, and he's showing that he can play at this level. Unlike those Steelers quarterbacks last year who got an opportunity, whether it's Duck Hodges or Mason Rudolph, that showed, man, they stink. This guy came in and did some quality things last night that make you say, hey, with more reps, more opportunities, he's going to get better, and he's going to be a guy that you can turn over your team to for a 3-4 week stretch if need be, and you won't fall off the table and off the radar with this guy under center. So saw some really promising things from Brett Rippon, but the turnovers almost were backbreaking. You get to Sam Darnold, and for me, the first thing was the sprained shoulder, and I'm just glad that he was able to come back, number one. Number two, I'm glad it wasn't severe, and number three, he showed me some athleticism last night that I didn't know he had necessarily to that degree. I knew he could move. I knew he wasn't a stiff out there. I just didn't know he could do that. That 46-yard run was crazy. And it wasn't just straight line. He juked Simmons, the safety, okay? He put a nice little doopsie-doo on him, stuck his foot in the ground, cut back on him. Then he duped Kareem Jackson by, I'm a slide. No, I'm not going to slide. I got you. You thought I was going to slide, did you? Oh, I got you. I got you, dude. I got you. And then he ran for 46 yards in the touchdown. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. I didn't know you could do that. But above all else, there's just not a lot of talent out there, man. Simply put. We talked about it last night. We talked about it before the season. And the fact that Denzel Mims, who they were really counting on to give them something as a second-round pick out of Baylor, is injured. It really hurts them because they have nothing. And I talked about this when they allowed Robbie Anderson to leave in free agency. And I said, look, you cannot count on the the Nebraska receiver that keeps getting hurt, that we saw some things from like 3 years ago and was like, man, he's actually impressive when he's healthy, but he's never healthy. You can't keep relying on guys that haven't shown you the penchant for staying healthy, and they just simply don't have enough out there. They don't. And it's a shame because it's hard to evaluate Sam Darnold. Remember at the end of last year, they were playing good football. They went 6-2 down the stretch. Everybody was excited about Darnold, thought that, maybe this would be the year that he would take that monumental leap forward, similar to Josh Allen and what we're seeing from the Bills right now with Josh Allen. Big difference there is the Bills went out this past offseason and said, we're going to get you really the last 2 off seasons, because a lot of people fail to realize that last offseason, not this one that just passed, but the one prior to that, they went out and got Cole Beasley and John Brown. Okay, they said, we're going to get you some targets. May not be what we ultimately end up having, but we're going to start you off with something. We're going to give you a little something to work with. We're going to also go get you Dawson Knox. So we're going to get you a tight end and get you a couple of targets to throw the football to, just to kind of wet your palate a little bit, get you a little bit of some confidence, and then we're really going to go all in on you next year. If you show us something with these guys that we're giving you here, we're going to go all in on you next year. And what did they do? They went and traded for Stephon Diggs. They drafted him 2 more wide receivers in Isaiah Hodgins, who really hasn't contributed this year, and Gabe Davis out of UCF, who has been huge for them in this young season. And they said, we're going to add another running back to the mix, all right, in Moss. And we got you Singletary last year. So now you got all the weapons you need. You're good now. You're ready to go. And we're going to add Tyler Kroft to the mix as well at the tight end position to give you another weapon and another guy that can help us in the run game. So they surrounded Josh Allen with tons of weaponry. And now you see what he's doing. The direct opposite has been done to Sam Darnold in New York. They've essentially subtracted weapons from him and said, hey, we're going to take some of this stuff away from you. You'll be fine, right? You'll make it work, right? Yeah, you can do it. And he can't. And it's not fair to him. And it's going to put them in an interesting position at season's end. Because we talked about this last night. We talked about it on the podcast on Monday. What do you do if you end up with the number 1 overall pick if you're the Jets? You're going to fire Adam Gase, more likely than not. You're going to get a brand new head coach in here. What does that coach want to do? Does he want to build around Sam Darnold, or does he say, you know what? Trevor Lawrence looks pretty damn good to me. That's the guy I want to build my franchise around. What do you do with Sam Darnold? He could be the odd man out. Maybe he gets a chance, and maybe he needs a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe that's the best thing that could happen to Sam Darnold, is that he gets traded to a team that needs a quarterback, and they're outside of that, neighborhood of, the first 7 picks where those first 3 quarterbacks more likely than not are going to come off the board, and they still want a guy. Maybe Sam Darnold's your guy. I don't know. We'll see. Another leftover from last night. MetLife Stadium turf. This has been a real discussion the last 3 weeks, starting in week 2 when the 49ers had all those devastating injuries. And Kyle Shanahan said after that game, because the very next week they needed to come back to MetLife to play the Giants after playing the Jets the week prior. And he said, I don't want to take my team back to New Jersey. I don't want to play on that turf again. I'm scared. I don't want to put my team through that again. That field is atrocious. And last night, Lawrence Cager went down. Non-contact injury. And it prompted a lot more discussion about this stadium turf at MetLife. And I saw one of the funniest tweets I've seen in a long time as a reaction to this. So Raheem Mostert tweeted out that, the turf at that stadium is ridiculous. The NFL has to do something because he injured himself. He injured his MCL on this MetLife Stadium turf in week 2, along with Boza tearing his ACL and Solomon Thomas tearing his ACL and, Jimmy Garoppolo turning his ankle and a bevy of other injuries for the 49ers in that game. But the funny tweet that I saw, I don't remember who tweeted this out, but it was hilarious. He said, the reason this stadium is called MetLife is because you need insurance to play on that turf. Good one. That was a good one. But seriously, this is a brand new stadium. And if this is a real problem, the Giants and the Jets, they need to look into this, because you can't have guys getting injured on this. I remember a couple of years ago, Washington had an issue with their field and their grass, and that all the injuries that were haven't happened on that field, and players were feeling unsafe on the field, and they had to get new grass in there. The Giants and the Jets may have to do something about this turf. If these players feel like it's a safety hazard, maybe they need to switch to something else. But that's definitely been an issue early in this season with this field, and a slew of injuries. And the Giants have had a bevy of injuries to their team on this field. So I don't know. Maybe it's the field. Maybe it's just this season with the lack of preseason and all of these soft tissue injuries and all of these major injuries that we've seen. Maybe that's where the correlation really lies, and not necessarily with this field, because we've seen injuries occur all over the league, not just here at MetLife Stadium on that turf. But I digress. I want to wrap this thing up in Thursday night leftovers with this. The Broncos were pissed off last night. I didn't realize this because I had a show to do. So once I saw the game was in hand and that the Broncos were going to win, I turned the TV off to get ready for the overtime series. But what I learned later on is that Vic Fangio rushed his team off into the locker room because, quote unquote, they were getting pissed off because of all the personal foul penalties at the Jets, and he didn't want this thing to get ugly after the game was over. So he made sure that his team ran into the locker room to get off the field so that no altercations would occur. I find that very interesting. One of the penalties that was a personal foul actually helped the Broncos and ultimately helped propel them to the victory. Without it, they probably lose this game. If Quinnen Williams doesn't grab the opening of the helmet of quarterback Brett Rippon, they probably lose the game. They would have had to have punted on 4th down, and I don't know if they get the football back. They would have had to use all of their timeouts, and they would have been in a really... That penalty happens. He makes the pass to Tim Patrick 3 plays later. They're in field goal range. They ultimately win the game after getting a 4th down stop and then scoring another touchdown. So I just know this. There were a bunch of penalties by the Jets in this game. It was 11 penalties to be exact. 8 of them coming in the first half, like 4 or 5 of them of the personal foul variety. And the Broncos had enough, apparently. And so I don't know. I just know that it could have gotten a little chippy at the end, and Vic Fangio saw the writing on the wall and got his team out of there. I just thought that was something interesting worth noting. So let's now move on to what you've all been waiting for patiently, and I appreciate that. You know what time it is. My money picks of the week. Yeah, man, it's that time. It's that time. So, week 3 for the kid, not the best week for me to this point. I started out the season scorching hot, 13-3, 13-3. And so that was 26-10 total to start off the season. Last week, 10-6. I don't feel good about that, but it was a weird week. I went out on a limb a couple of times. That Houston game, man, that one hurt. That was the one that I looked at. That and the Washington game were the two that hurt me the most because those are winnable football games. You know, the Texans played a outstanding first half, and then they went to sleep in the second half. They absolutely went to sleep. They didn't score a single point in the second half of that game after scoring 21 in the first half. That one hurt my soul. And then Washington, they take the lead and have the lead going into the fourth quarter, 20-17, and then they implode, give up, 17 points, unanswered points in the fourth quarter, and lose that game 34-20. So that one hurt as well. But as I mentioned on Monday, it could have been a lot worse. The Titans could have lost to the Vikings. That they should have lost that game, like I said. And I thought the Broncos were going to lose. I don't know if you watched the game, but Busby, the corner, had a pick right in his hands at the end. And I said, usually when you drop that pick, they go down and they score and you lose. And I thought they were going to lose the football game after he dropped that pick, but luckily they were able to get the fourth down stop on the very next play and win the game. But the Vikings had a chance. Holton Hill had a pick right in his hands at the end of that game, did not catch it. the Titans go down, get the game-winning field goal, and survive 31-30. I could have lost that football game. You know, the Cowboys had a chance in that game, in that wild one versus Seattle. Could have lost that game. If Taysom Hill doesn't fumble versus the Packers on Sunday night, maybe the Saints win 37-30 instead of Aaron Rodgers and company coming out on top. It could have been a lot worse than it ultimately was for me, so I'm not complaining. But that being said, I'll take the 10-6. That improves my record overall in the season to 36-12. I feel good about where I am. I'm also 3-0 on my survivor picks. I gave out the Indianapolis Colts last week, and I had a funny tweet from someone that said, "Hey," and I think I read it and told you guys about it on the pod on Monday. But somebody was like, "Hey, what did I tell you about the Indianapolis Colts? The last time everybody picked Indianapolis for their survivor pick, it wiped out half your pool in week 1 when they lost to Jacksonville." I told you guys about family business. I have rules to this. There are rules to this survivor pool thing. Okay, rules of engagement. I've given you guys the game already. I'm not going to keep giving you the game over and over again so you can use my game against me and beat me. But I know when and when not to do certain things. And last week was a definite because the Jets stink. And so I've got 3-0 survivor pool picks to this point on the season. I'm looking to make it 4-0. But let's get to these money picks of the week. So we'll run through these quickly. I'm 1-0. Picked Denver last night to get the win. They took care of business, so I'm off to a good start this week. We head to Detroit, where the Lions will host the New Orleans Saints. Lions coming off of their first win of the season last week against Arizona on the road. That was an impressive win by the Detroit Lions. Now can they come home and do it again? I think the biggest key here is, will Michael Thomas play? So Alvin Kamara got me hyped up. And I probably fell for the okie doke here because he said, hey, Michael Thomas has looked extraordinary in practice. That doesn't mean he's going to play. This means that he looks really good, like he could play. I took that as, hey, he's good enough to play. And the Saints can't afford to be just resting guys now. They're 1-2. Can't afford to fall to 1-3. And now it's starting to matter because this is an NFC game. You know, you want to lose against an AFC opponent, go right ahead. But these losses that they're accumulating, you can't have these losses against NFC opponents. You lose against the AFC, that's one thing, because they don't count against your divisional or conference record. But when you start losing games in the conference, now you have an issue on your hands. And so the Raiders game on Monday night a couple of weeks ago, okay, whatever. You lose to Green Bay. That's a big game because when we start talking about pole position later on in the season, when we start talking about, hey, you're trying to get the 2 or the 3 seed, you're trying to get the 3 or the 4 seed, that's when we start looking at stuff like that. Oh, you're trying to get the 5 or the 6. Like, you remember how last year everybody was jockeying for a position and the 49ers could have gone from 1st to 5th seed if they didn't win that game in Seattle? You try to avoid that by winning games in the conference. You lost one last week. You can't afford to lose another one here. So I think if Michael Thomas is good to go, he's going to go. And what they're trying to avoid is a setback. I think that's the thing they're trying to gauge is, hey, how healthy are you? And then how risky is it to play you this week? And will you have a setback? I'm banking on him not having a setback and them rolling the dice and putting him out there. If they put him out there, they're going to beat the Detroit Lions. If they don't put him out there, the Lions are going to win this football game. So it really boils down to, hey, Mike, you good? I'm going to err on the side of, yes, they can't afford to fall to 1-3. They're going to play Michael Thomas. He's going to have a big game, and they're going to go on the road and defeat the Detroit Lions. If he doesn't play, the Lions are going to win their second game in a row, and I'm going to take an L there. But I'm going to go with the Saints and them going to Detroit and getting the victory and getting back to 500 on the season. Los Angeles Chargers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I actually think this is going to be a really good game because I'm still not overly impressed with Tampa Bay's offense to this point. I've seen growth from this offense, but they're not a juggernaut. And one thing I've seen with the Chargers is that they can limit anybody's offense this season. All right, nobody's scoring points on them. Carolina put up 21, and that was off of the strength of 5 field goals, okay? The Bengals, okay, they're not a dynamic offense by any stretch of the imagination, but they've scored points on teams this year. They scored 23 and 30 in their last 2 games. And so they can score. They only scored 13 in week 1. And they held the Chiefs down to 23 points, and they needed overtime to do that. So this is a Chargers offense, or defense, that can play ball with anybody. And I think they're going to get to Brady, make him uncomfortable. You may get another interception or 2 from Brady in this game. But when it's all said and done, I've told you that the Chargers are offensively challenged. And the Bucs actually play quality defense. And because of that, I think you're going to see a situation where they just won't have enough juice offensively to get it done. And that's why the Buccaneers will win their 3rd straight after losing their first game of the season. And they'll improve to 3-1 with the win over the Los Angeles Chargers in this ball game. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals. Jacksonville, on the positive side, on the bright side, they had a whole week and a half to prepare for Cincinnati. On the bad side and the dark side is that they were horrible in their last showing, allowing the Dolphins to carve them up in essentially one half of football and then coast in the second half. They weren't very good. Now, the real question is DJ Chark playing next game? I surmise that he is, which is going to help that offense out immensely. However, this Cincinnati Bengals team is starving for a victory. I mean, they are hungry for their first win of the season. Almost got it in week 3 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they get it in week number 4, man. This team is on the cusp of breaking through and winning games. And remember, I told you the Bengals are going to win more games than people anticipate this season. I look at them as the Arizona Cardinals of last year. Number 1 overall pick. They got a tie already like Arizona did last year. And if I'm not mistaken, Arizona had theirs in week 1. They had theirs in week 3. So early in the season tie, you're going to find your way through a couple of tough losses, but also win some games that people don't expect. And when it's all said and done, you're 5-10-1. And nobody expected Cincinnati to win any more than 3 or 4 games. So I see a lot of that in them, where you got a guy that in Joe Burrow that's probably going to be your offensive rookie of the year, like Kyler Murray was last season for the Arizona Cardinals. And I think you're going to see a lot of the same similarities here. And I think it begins. The first win happens this week at home versus Jacksonville. What time like the present? No better time than the present to get your first win with a Jacksonville Jaguars team that is searching for an identity. I still think they're trying to figure out who they are as a football team. I think Cincinnati's able to get their first win of the season. Give me the Bengals at home to do exactly that. Minnesota at Houston. You already know how I feel about this game. I told you I'm not counting the Houston Texans out. I still think they're going to factor into that AFC South divisional race before it's all said and done. But in order to do that, you got to win. And you can't win 3 in a row and get back to 500 without winning 1 first. And so this is the perfect opponent for them at home in Minnesota, who can't stop anybody. It's exactly what the doctor has ordered. This is the prescription that the doctor wrote for this Texans offense that has struggled this year, which is surprising because to me, that's the strong suit of their football team, or at least we thought it was. But look, this is that DeAndre Hopkins hangover that everyone was talking about. And this is what happens when you get rid of the best receiver in football and replace him with a guy that's not in the top 10 in Brandon Cooks. And so you had to know there would be a little bit of a malaise of sorts because of that D-Hop exit. But at some point, they're going to snap out of it. There's too much talent there between Kenny Stills, Brandon Cooks, and Will Fuller. There's just too much talent there. You sprinkle in a little bit of Kiki QT and, David Johnson. And when they finally get Duke Johnson back, I think that offense has a chance to pop. This is the perfect team for you to finally score 30 this season and get off the schneid. And I think the Texans do that. And they pop off in a major way. I could see them scoring 37 in this game and winning this thing going away over the Minnesota Vikings. Give me the Texans to get their first win of the season and start to climb back to respectability in the AFC South division. Give me the Texans at home. Seattle Seahawks at the Miami Dolphins. Man, the Dolphins played really well last week. Got their first win. And your consolation prize for that? You get the Seattle Seahawks at home. That really sucks. Now, I will say this. If there's one silver lining, the Seahawks, as I just mentioned with the Minnesota Vikings, cannot stop anybody. Okay? But as we all know, Ryan Fitzpatrick has his good games And he has his bad games. He just had a really good game. 18 of 20, didn't turn it over, managed the game well, was absolutely surgical in the first half versus Jacksonville on Thursday Night Football last week. He's due for a stinker. He's due for that fitty performance that we all know he's good for. And so maybe Seattle's defense gets healthy this week against a Dolphins team that is up and down. But I wouldn't be shocked if this is a shootout. And this is a much closer game than people think. And we go into the fourth quarter and the Dolphins are hanging around in a 27-23 game. And it ultimately ends up being 38-30. I could see that taking place. But at the end of the day, all that said, I still see Seattle being out on top when it's all said and done. And so give me the Seahawks to improve to 4-0 on the season with another win. You go Cleveland at Dallas. I'm not impressed with either one of these teams to this point. Now, I am impressed with Dallas's offense. They have a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. Tyron Smith may not play in this game. So what? Seems like the next guy just seems to step up in Dallas, and that's what happens when you have talent and you have an eye for talent. They've had some undrafted guys step in on the offensive line, and they haven't missed a beat for the most part. They did a really good job up front against Seattle last week, except for the final drive of the game when they allowed Seattle to get a little bit of pressure. But that being said, Blake Jarwin goes down. Dalton Schultz just steps up. What did he have? 9 catches last week? Like, this offense is a machine, okay? They've got weapons everywhere. And Zeke Elliott was awful last week, and they still scored 31 points. So they can score with the best of them. The problem is they gave up 38 last week. And the week before that, they gave up 39, okay? So you can score. And Baker Mayfield and company showed, a couple of weeks ago that they could score by scoring 35, and then the following week they score 34. So they showed that they can score if you make mistakes. Dallas has been prone to mistakes this season. If they make mistakes, Cleveland can win this game. If they play mistake-free football, the Browns don't stand a chance in this game. I think the Cowboys get their act together and find a way to win. The last time they had a home game, though, they thought the game started at 8:20, and they almost pissed it away. If they get off to a faster start, I think they win this game and they win it big. Give me Dallas at home to get back to 500 on the season. Arizona at Carolina is an interesting game because the Panthers are a lot better defensive team than I gave them credit for when the season started. They've played some really good defense outside of week 1 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. They've played some really good defense this season. I thought they did some good things against Tampa Bay. And remember, that was a one-score game at one point after falling down early in that game. They came back and made it a contest before Tampa Bay was able to pull away with a late Fournette run. So this team is better defensively. I'm not going to give you any credit for shutting down an already anemic Chargers offense. You don't get any points for that. But you did what you were supposed to do. So I'm anxious to see how they handle a much more dynamic and explosive offense in Arizona, who is disappointed in their performance from last week in Kyler Murray's 3-interception performance versus Detroit in that loss, their first of the season. I think they're looking to bounce back on the road, and I think this is a great opponent to do that against. I think Carolina still has a long way to go. No Christian McCaffrey, so that's a blessing for you if you're Arizona. I think you go in there, you put up 34. They can't keep up with that kind of pace. You put up 34, the Panthers want no parts of that. They won last week scoring 21 points, kicking 5 field goals. They're not an offensive juggernaut. So if you can go in there and put up points, you're going to have a chance to run away from them in this game. And I think Murray's going to bounce back. If he's not careful, though, this Panthers defense can get after you. They've got some team speed defensively. Brian Burns and company can run around. Shaq Thompson, these guys are athletes. If you're not careful, you can have a repeat of last week where you turn it over 2 or 3 times because they were very opportunistic last week, were the Carolina Panthers. They forced 4 turnovers last week of a rookie. And this is a second-year quarterback in Kyler Murray who is still prone to making mistakes. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think this is a measuring stick, a bit of a barometer for the Panthers. I said all of that to say Arizona's going to win this football game. But I'm interested to see how the Panthers handle the success of winning on the road last week. And what do they do for an encore? I'm really fascinated by this game, probably more so than many of you are. I'll take the Arizona Cardinals, however, on the road to get to 3-1 on the season. Indianapolis at Chicago is one of the more fascinating games. It's a Midwest matchup between two teams that are right up the road from each other. But more than that, you got two veteran quarterbacks squaring off. One guy getting his first start of the season for his brand new team in Nicholas Foles after a come-from-behind victory in which he threw 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter to lead the Bears from a 16-point deficit to a 4-point win against the Falcons on the road. So he's riding high right now. And don't forget, the Bears are 3-0. They're undefeated this season. So let's not forget about that. The Indianapolis Colts, however, on the other side, started slow. Lost to Jacksonville in week 1, but have bounced back with 2 impressive victories in a row. Now, again, 2 winless teams in a row. Okay, those 2 teams combined for an 0-7 record at this point. So they didn't beat anybody good, but it does help them build confidence. And that's what we talk about all the time. Winning begets confidence. Confidence begets winning. It's a flavor delicious, vicious cycle that you want to repeat often throughout the season. They've got 2 in a row now. Now we're going to see just how much confidence was built off of those 2 wins. Or are they a house of cards per se, and they're not going to be as good as we think? We're going to find out a lot about Indianapolis because I think they're fully capable of going on the road and beating Chicago. That defense in Chicago is fully capable of forcing Phillip Rivers into 3 turnovers and winning this football game on the strength of the defense with a little bit of Nicholas Foles. Who's going to win out? Is it going to be the Colts defense against Nicholas Foles, or is it going to be the Bears defense against Phillip Rivers? I'm going with the Colts on this one. I'm going with the road team. I've been big on the Colts. Before the season started, I told you I thought they were going to be a team that was going to compete for the division in the AFC South. I'm not moving off of that spot. I think this is a really good spot for them to prove that, hey, they're serious in Indianapolis. Not enough people are really paying attention to what they're doing. Here's an opportunity to knock a team from the ranks of the unbeaten and get a little bit of respect in the process. I'll take Indianapolis to go to Chicago and find a way to get it done. If Phillip Rivers protects the football, they're going to win that football game. If he has 2 turnovers, and I don't care how they come, fumble, interception, because the Bears can get after the quarterback. If he has 2 turnovers in this game, they lose. If he has 1 or less, they win this football game. I'll take the Indianapolis Colts. Baltimore at Washington. I'll save you the suspense because normally I make you wait until my show later on tonight, but there's no secret here. I've already said this at least 5 times this week that Washington has no chance in this game. So I don't have to make you wait until my Washington Football Nightly show later on today to get this prediction. You just have to wait for the final score and how we get to that point. But the Ravens are pissed. They got embarrassed on Monday Night Football at home. Okay, they understand that it's not about beating Washington or beating the Giants or destroying the Browns as they did earlier this season. That's all cute, fine, and dandy, but what it all boils down to is, can you beat the Chiefs? They're your kryptonite. Lamar Jackson said it himself. They're our kryptonite. That's what it's going to boil down to. But in the meantime, you got to keep stepping and squashing these little bugs that they put in front of your face in order to get back to a point where you get a chance to take on your arch nemesis in Kansas City. So here's a bug that they're putting in your way that you have to squash to get where you ultimately want to be, which is the playoffs with a chance to have a home playoff game against the Chiefs. They're going to squash Washington. This is going to get ugly, and it may get ugly early. It may get ugly often. And they're pissed, and they got to take it out on somebody. And unfortunately, it's going to be Washington. Give me the Ravens on the road to take care of their I-95 buddies up the road. This could get ugly. Really, really bad. Giants at the Rams. The Giants stink. I told you that the Jets stink. I told you that the Giants stink. I told you that these are the 2 worst teams in their respective conferences. And it's going to be a while before either of those teams win. Now, the Giants will probably have their first opportunity in week 6 when they meet Washington. That'll be the first chance that they'll really have to get a win. They could have won in week 1. I didn't think they were going to beat the Steelers, but they had a chance. After that interception, everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket. They had a shot in week 2. All right, versus the Bears. After starting down 17-0, they crawled back to 17-13 and had a shot. They failed. They didn't have a shot in week 3, and I don't think they have a shot here in week 4. The Rams they showed me something last week because they could have crawled in a hole and died last week after falling down 28-3 mid stages of the third quarter. But instead, they showed the intestinal fortitude of a team that was in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. And they look like they're getting back to that form again, rattling off 29 unanswered points before ultimately losing and blowing that small little cushion that they had built themselves at the end of that ball game. But that's nor here nor there. This team can score. They're back to being dynamic and explosive offensively. And Aaron Donald is a problem for a Giants offensive line that is just an absolute joke. This could get ugly. I expect it to get ugly. I even expect it to get ugly to the point where I make this my sole survivor pick of the week. Give me the Rams to move my survivor picks to 4-0 on the season and get the Giants to 0-4 on the season. I'll take the Rams at home. New England Patriots at the Kansas City Chiefs. This should be a lot of fun. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming off an impressive win 34-20 over the Ravens on Monday Night Football, in which they really dismantled the Ravens. The score doesn't really do it any justice. They were up 27-10 at half and looked like they were about to blow the doors off of that game until Darwin Thompson fumbled the football. Nonetheless, this team is a machine offensively. Mahomes is the best in the business right now, and their weaponry is absolutely ridiculous. Their C4 on grass is essentially what the Chiefs offense is. And I just don't see the Patriots, even though they're going to do their best to try to slow them down, what Belichick has been able to do in the past. And I think they're going to try to do this. This is going to make this game interesting. They're going to try to run the football. You're going to see more of the Patriots that we saw in week 1 and even week 3 to an extent, lesser degree, but a similar extent in week 3 versus the Raiders, and less of what you saw versus the Seahawks in week 2. This isn't going to be a shootout, I don't think. I don't think you're going to see 38-35 or 35-30 like you did week 2 versus Seattle. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of the run, trying to keep the football away from Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. I think you're going to see an approach where they're going to look to try to take 2 of the 3 guys away. And those 3 guys are Samuel Watkins, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. I think he's going to try to take 2 of those guys away. More likely than not, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. He's going to try to take those guys away. The one that's going to probably ultimately end up hurting him is Samuel Watkins with a sprinkle of Mecole Hardman. Because you just don't have enough. Nobody has enough to cover this team. And at some point, someone's going to get behind your defense and make an explosive play. But they're going to give it a run. Are the Patriots. They're going to try to take some things away. They're going to try to run the football. They're going to try to take the air out of the ball and keep the clock running and shorten this game. And I think it's going to be effective for a little while, but eventually the Chiefs are going to chief, okay? They're going to do what they do, and they're going to ultimately catch the Patriots napping on defense on the back end one time, and that's all it takes. You blink twice, and what was once a game that was respectable at 14-6 that the Patriots were hanging in and playing the kind of game that they wanted to play through, 2.5 quarters as we're midway through the third and it's only 14-6. You blink twice, you go to your fridge, you make a sandwich, you come back, and now it's 28-13. And you're like, well, damn, what just happened? The Chiefs offense happened. That's what happened. And so I think that's what's going to ultimately happen is they just don't have enough. And so the Chiefs will win this football game, remain unbeaten on the season, and improve to 4-0. Buffalo at Las Vegas Raiders. This is a big game for both of these teams involved. I talked about the Raiders, and if you're serious, you need to find a way to go 2-2 in this 4-game stretch. You're 0-1 right now after losing to the Patriots last week. It's not getting any easier for you. You got the Chiefs next, and then you got the Buccaneers after a bye week after that. So if you don't beat Buffalo, more likely than not, you're not beating the Chiefs or the Buccaneers. And so this is imperative that you get this game if you're Las Vegas. You're at home, and the Bills got a scare last week after starting that game red hot, getting up 28-3. They almost blew a 25-point lead, but they salvaged it by coming back and finding a way to win 32-29. Now they're looking at themselves and saying, we're mortal. Okay, we thought we were immortal after getting out to that big lead, but we saw that we bleed just like everybody else. And so I think they're on high alert now. And Josh Allen is playing at a ridiculous level. And this is what it really boils down to at the end of the day. The Raiders can't stop anybody offensively. And the Bills are as hot as any team in the league offensively. Translation, they're going to score 30 plus points. And the Raiders aren't going to be able to keep up. And I think they're going to be without Henry Ruggs the third again. And if they are, for the second week in a row, they're going to look like their offense last year, which lacked speed and the ability to stretch you vertically. And if you can't stretch a team vertically, it's hard for them to respect you as an offense. I'll take the Bills in this football game. They're the better team anyhow. And I think they remain unbeaten on the season at 4-0. We now make our way to the primetime games to wrap up week number 4. Philadelphia at San Francisco on a Sunday night. If the Eagles want any chance of salvaging their season, they have to win this game. They've got a shot because Nick Mullins is still at quarterback, but I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or not. Nick Mullins threw for over 300 yards last week. Now, I get it. It was the Giants. But still, that was pretty damn impressive to help your team go out and score 36 points and not turn it over and not do anything to hamper your team in your first start of the season. Nick Mullins was impressive. This 49ers defense is still good enough, even with all the injuries, to really stifle what has been an anemic Eagles offense to this point. Carson Wentz is in some kind of funk, and I don't know if he's going to snap out of it. And I read something that was insane, that yesterday the Eagles had one wide receiver healthy at practice. That can't be right. You gotta be kidding me. Now, obviously, they're going to have more bodies come Sunday, and practice is practice, but that just tells you they're banged up at the receiver position. Jalen Reagor has been placed on IR with an injury. They're in some trouble, are the Eagles. I don't think the 49ers are your remedy. I don't think that's the prescription that your doctor wrote. Hey, go to San Francisco on a Sunday night with a banged up wide receiver core and the offensive line has been up and down and go and get a win. That's not the prescription that your doctor wrote. They're not winning this football game. San Francisco is going to win at home. I'll take the 49ers to protect their home turf. And finally, Monday Night Football, and we'll talk more about this on the Monday pod, but Atlanta at Green Bay. This is interesting because Alan Lazard, who was the star of Sunday night's game, just had muscle core surgery and is out for at least the next 6 to 8 weeks. So we keep talking about Green Bay having to find that number 2 guy, and just when you think Aaron Rodgers may have found that guy, he's gone. So now it's like, hey, is Devontae Adams playing this week? Just like Michael Thomas. We don't know. And if he doesn't play and now there's no Alan Lazard, well, who the hell is Aaron Rodgers throwing the football to anyway? Look, we know Aaron Rodgers will take anybody who's anybody and turn them into a viable target out there. We've seen him do it many a times. And so it'll probably be Marquez Valdez-Scantling that steps up and has 147 yards and 2 touchdowns and en route to a Packers 33 to 24 victory over the Falcons. But the Falcons can't stop anybody. That's their problem. And even though the Packers are banged up, Aaron Jones will eat. Aaron Rodgers will do enough, and they'll still score over 30 against this Falcons defense that just can't seem to stop anybody. So at the end of the day, I'm sticking with the home teams in primetime situations on Sunday and Monday. Give me Green Bay to remain unbeaten on the season. And unfortunately for the Falcons, you needed a life raft here after these tough losses the last 2 weeks. You needed a Jets or a Giants or a Washington or somebody that you could get right off of. They throw you Green Bay. Even though they're banged up, you don't want to see the bad man. Nobody does. And so those are my week 4 money picks of the week. Feel really damn good about those too. This is the first week, and I can honestly say that I feel really good about my picks. I've had apprehensions each of the first 3 weeks. I have none this week. I feel really good about these picks. I don't have to go out on the limb and pick my boys. They don't have a chance in hell this week. So I feel good about not having that on my conscience. I think there are some really close games between two evenly matched teams that could go either way. I mean, New Orleans, Detroit, that could go either way, especially if Michael Thomas doesn't play. Jacksonville, Cincinnati, I'm going out on a limb. I picked a winless team, but I feel good about that. Cincinnati's home. I feel good about that pick. Minnesota, Houston, two winless teams. I feel good about Houston, though, okay? You look at Cleveland, Dallas. Look, Cleveland's 2-1. Dallas is 1-2. Cleveland can score. Dallas can't stop anybody. That could go either way. I feel good about Dallas, though, in that game. Indy, Chicago is one that I'm nervous about. If you ask me which one of these games are you most nervous about, it's Indy at Chicago, because I feel like Phillip Rivers has a 3-interception or a 3-turnover game in him, and that'll doom them on the road versus the Bears. But I'm going against my better judgment, and I'm going out on a limb with Indianapolis here, and I feel good about that. I do feel good about that. And so Buffalo and Las Vegas is interesting, but I think I'm on the right side of that one too. And I always like when I keep the roadies to a minimum. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 road teams. I usually like to keep it at 6 when there's a full 16 game slate. But I feel confident about these 7 teams that I've taken on the road, and I took Denver, so they've already gotten it done for me on the road and got me off to a 1-0 start on the road. So I feel really good about these picks, man. I think I'm going to come back next week and I'm going to tell you I just went 14-2. That's what I'm looking at right now. I feel that. I feel it in my soul. And so that's going to do it for your man Louie T here on the Louie T Network podcast, episode number 96. You guys enjoy your weekend. We got Major League baseball playoffs. We got NBA Finals, which I'm not watching because it's not compelling basketball for me. I've got college football coming my way. And then you get the NFL on Sunday. This is going to be a hell of a weekend. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the festivities. We'll come back on Monday. We'll break it all down as we always do. And in between, you'll get an overtime from me. You'll get 2 overtimes, one Washington and one Sunday night. And then we'll come down and we'll talk about the Monday night game and preview that. And we'll break them all down as we go slate skating on Monday. You know how we do. You already know. But before then, go ahead and enjoy your weekend, man. Pop the top on one for me. And I'll do the same for you. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Remember, if you're out there, if you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Go ahead, turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And hit that like button on the way out. And also, we got an exclusive Louie T Network shirt that's available. If you look down in the description of this video, click on the Print Champs link. And for a limited time, only in October, we're selling the Susan G. Komen Louie T Network shirts. The pink shirts with the logo. And some of the proceeds will go to the Susan G. Komen Foundation. So we're doing our part to help further cancer research for breast cancer. And so you guys support the Louie T Network and the movement to try to find a cure for breast cancer in the process. So those shirts are available on the website, on the Print Champs website. I'll be updating my website this weekend to show those shirts being available as well. But if you want to support the Louie T Network with your breast cancer awareness shirt, we have those available on the site, in addition to all of the merch that you normally have access to on the Louie T Network or the printchamps.com. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to glide to the side. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. Louie T.